All right, everyone. Welcome. Bruchim Habaim. It is not Shabbat anymore, from what I can tell. Looking out the window, we're now in the darkness of the winter months with our not so daylight savings. It's a daylight consuming time. And we are about to start chapter 8. So let's say our bracha together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. It's weird. My camera makes it look like I'm not looking at you guys. There, that's a little better. And here we are, chapter 8. Oh, but I need to add the cantillation marks. So vowels and cantillation. Okay. So we just finally got through the end of chapter 7. And now I'm going to enlarge this. I think is it small for you guys? Maybe that's a little better. Okay. Mi kehechacham umi yodea pesher davar chochmat adam ta'ir panav vos panav yeshuneh. Who is like the wise ones and who knows the meaning or the interpretation of the matter? We're going to talk about that word pesher. It's an interesting word. The wisdom of a human being enlightens his face, and the strength of his face or of his countenance, as we often will say, will be changed. Wow, they have some fancy translation here, don't they? But that's a very literal translation. Who is like the wise one, and who knows the interpretation of the matter? And what is what or of the word or words? And I guess it's the following passage, at least the way it's presented in this translation. He's basically saying, who knows the meaning of this phrase? Chochmat Adam ta'ir panav, va'oz panav yeshuneh. So it's almost like he's teaching us Torah. It's like, in the way I read this, I think it's pretty much the pshat, or the simple interpretation is he's about to teach us a teaching and explain its meaning. And the text that he's going to teach us is the wisdom of a human being will enlighten his countenance or his face, and the strength of his countenance or face will be Yeshuneh. And then you have all of these. Yeah, okay. Is dissembled is how they translate Yeshuneh. I think I misread Yeshuneh.
Yeah, ours has changed.
Yeah, that's what I said before, but the challenge with that is the aleph at the end. Shinui is shin nun hey, but interestingly, this is shin nun aleph, which is not even given. Oh, here. Okay, they say it is the same root. Shana. Oh, see here, it's Shana is also Shana with a hey. Okay, and the strength of his face or his appearance will change. So the wisdom of a person will enlighten, or the wisdom of a person will light up his face, will enlighten his face, will make so when a person is wise, their face lights up, and the strength of that person's lit up face will change, is what it seems. So how do you have it as translations? Because that's
The
very
harshness of his face is changed. So someone that's harsh is going to change into having this great wisdom.
And where do you get the what was I think I may have missed what
It's
you said.
harshness.
Harshness. Where is harshness?
And the harshness of his face is changed. Yours is disconnect.
So the word is oz, which means strength, as in Adonai oz le'amo yiteh. and the strength, right? We have Adonai Ozle Amo Yitain, Adonai Yivarech et Amo Vashalom. It's at the end of Birkat Hamazon. God will give strength to his people. God will give. So Ozi v'zimrat Yah, the strength, my strength, and the praise of God, Vahi li lishua, will be salvation for me. So the pshat, the most simple meaning is strength or strongness. Look at all the interesting, uh, other ways it's understood. Az as strong or mighty, as right. Uh, my father bought. Oh no, that's Zuz. Oz as uh, might or strength. Oz, here it is. But here it's being interpreted as harshness. So here it is as pungent, but it's a little different. I don't really understand how they get that, but maybe we haven't looked at the context yet. Yeah, Sylvia.
Mine
So
is
it's interesting that Amos Oz, they chose that last name when it was
Yes.
something, you know, totally Germanic. And hi, Avital. So it is totally different. Starting with 8:1, who is the wise man and who knoweth the interpretation of a thing? It has nothing to do with the next line, which is weird. A man's wisdom maketh his face to shine, and the boldness of his face is changed.
The boldness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the translations of Oz. It's quite interesting. Boldness, harshness, deep discontent. I mean, wow, it is all over the place.
mine is different too.
What does
It
yours say?
is
And what
um,
translation is yours?
Kohelet, the written words of truth,
Oh, I don't know it.
and it's
Is that Steinsaltz?
yes, I think so. Who is like a wise man, able to see meaning? The wisdom a person has lights up his face, and the pride in his face is changed.
The
Pride.
pride,
Yeah.
boldness, the pride. So we have some wild. So on the most basic level, there's some question of translation, but then Sylvia is pointing out that the first part does not necessarily prepare us for the second part, even though it's understood that way.
In
But
ours,
yeah,
the
I like
second
your
part,
translation. Oh,
yeah, in both of ours, actually, you see they have quotation marks on the last two lines.
Huh.
Yours has it there too.
Uh, yeah. Yes. Well, that is, of course, interpretation because there's no quotes in the actual text. I mean, it's interesting how much we have to interpret things. But interpretation is huge. There's a famous there's a famous line in the in the blessing, if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm closing my eyes as I try to get this. There is a prayer, a blessing that Jacob gives to his 12 sons at the end of his life. He blesses his kids and he says, this one will be like a this. He gives a whole litany, and the one for Asher uh, starts off Me Asher, from Asher. And people who are Bible scholars and not afraid to disrupt the tradition say someone made a mistake and put uh, the mem in the wrong spot. So the way they cut the verse up is the Masoretes was a mistake. And I think that, I wish I could find that, but I think it'll take us too far afield. That there is interpretation just in how we read the text and get the syntax. Yes, Sylvia.
so I looked up dissemble because I always thought it meant lying, and then I thought, well, maybe they're trying to say disassembled, but no, dissembled means to conceal one's true motives, feelings, or beliefs. And I don't know how you would get that from, what is it, Shinui?
Yeshune.
Yeshune.
I
So
don't know.
they talk about Shinui in the Talmud, if someone changes something, they steal something and then they change it, they
Yes,
own it.
right.
So, but that's not the same because there's a yud there.
No, it could be the same. So it's sorry for all my pop-ups. I don't know. Can you guys see all my pop? I keep getting messages. Okay.
We just
Sorry.
hear bleep, bleep.
Bleep, bleep. um, no. So in Hebrew grammar, the third letter, if it's a hey, you know that Hebrew words have a three-letter root. If the third letter is a hey or a yud, then it's considered a very weak letter, and they almost become interchangeable. Or I guess, I mean, I'm not enough of a grammarian to remember all the way, or a syntactician, whatever the word is for syntax, but uh, there are situations in which olives get switched for hays get switched for yuds, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what's going on. Let's see what Rashi says, because clearly this verse is being interpreted by most of these translations in rather harsh ways. And we haven't read verse 2 yet, but on the face of it, I don't know where this is coming from, but maybe Rashi will help us. Okay, we'll go to that in a moment. And the boldness of his face is changed from that of other people to the extent that they feared to approach him, Moses, because the skin of his face. Okay, so here's Moses with his shiny face, right? The horn, the rays of light. Michelangelo has a good time with this. Misheget elav ki karan, the Karen, the ray of light is a skin of his. I don't know how to translate that, but you see the whole idea that Jews have horns. You might remember that story of Michelangelo painting or sculpting Moses with horns. That is directly connected to this idea that Moses had horns. So, first there man's wisdom lights up his face, right? Wisdom of a human being enlightens his face or causes his face to shine. Now, don't forget, we have Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha. Again, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha in the Birkat Kohanim, the blessing, the priestly benediction. Right? Adonai, what did I just? Ya'er Adonai, cause his countenance to shine upon you, right? So God's presence causes you to shine. That's what the priestly benediction is saying. So we have that kind of language here. Everybody following that? Am I sort of a lot of silence? I want to make sure that
We're still here.
We're still here.
I thought someone was at the door. Sorry.
okay. So there's something about divine lighting up of our ponams, of our faces. And in this literal translation, the strength of a person's face will change. So what that means exactly is unclear, but I guess we're going to have to get the context. Now, I want to draw your attention to this word pesher. This is a big word in scholarship. You may know the story of Daniel and the lion's den, right? The story of Daniel, the book of Daniel, where Daniel, I think, if I remember correctly, is an interpreter of dreams, right? So when he makes an interpretation, it's called a pesher. And what's interesting about the word Pesher it seems to be an inversion of the letters of parashah. Perush. A perush is an explanation. A parashah is sort of a section, but it's an interpretation in a way, right? But pesher and perush, right? You may have heard the word perush. It's used all over the place in the Talmud, in the Mishnah. The perush, let's see if I have any books that say perush on them. It's usually books of commentary, commentaries on the Bible. So, but the word pesher is usually associated with a dream. It's a huge word also later on, specifically at Qumran, during the days of the Dead Sea Scrolls. What you see in the Dead Sea Scrolls literature, right, in the Qumran community's literature. Okay, everyone knows that the Dead Sea Scrolls were a group of many documents that were found in these interesting jugs in the middle of the desert, near the Dead Sea, very arid area. So there was no moisture to destroy these scrolls. They lived in caves, and they were buried in these caves. They were really hidden in caves. I think it's like 20, I can't remember, but there's like 20 caves. The most famous cave is cave number 4, but there are many caves. The story goes that in 1947, a Bedouin was running after a goat that had run off into the hills and saw a cave, and he took a stone to try to get this goat that had run off into the, or maybe it's we don't know, an ibex, a goat, wants to get the goat out of this cave, and throws the rock in, the stone, and instead of it hitting ground, he hears like the metallic sound that happens when a rock hits a clay pot. And from that sound, he knows that there's something inside the cave, not the goat, but the cave has something in it. He goes in and he finds these big jugs that are the shape. I don't know how to describe the shape, but they're long, cylindrical, with a little bit of a curve to them, with a mouth at top. And inside these jugs are a treasure trove of ancient sources. This is 1947. It's quite the story it's an epic tale, because 1947, what was happening? This was Jordan at the time, and it was minutes before the War of Independence for the State of Israel. So you have international intrigue going on in the most important find of documents in the history, perhaps of humanity. And anyway, that community that buried all these jugs of documents, of texts, were called we call them now the Qumran community, because the town next to these caves is a little city called, well, ancient city called Qumran with a Q. And this sect, this group of people that were living there, had fled from Jerusalem. They had rejected all of the Jewish established communal standards and views, and had become an angry sort of extremist group out in the desert that were trying to survive as Jews, who believed that the Jewish community of Jerusalem had been completely corrupted by the ascension of Zadok as the high priest, who was not supposed to be the high priest in their view. And they created their own community. And in these documents, in these scrolls, there was a mixture of sources that were direct biblical sources. Every scroll of the Bible, with the exception, I think, of the book of Esther, were found at Qumran. There were materials that were, you might want to call them apocryphal works, that is, materials that are presented as if they are biblical sources, but in fact are not really biblical sources, but pretend, and that's why it's called apocryphal. And then the third group is documents that were specific to the sect, law books, rules of the community. Um, Within this mix, the second category also had interpretations of both biblical sources and non biblical apocryphal sources. Those interpretations are called pisharim. And that's the word that we're looking at here. So it's a long detour from the text itself, but whenever I see the word pesher, I think of this history of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I find the Dead Sea Scrolls to be truly fascinating. I took a class on them from with Baruch Levine. Do I have his book here? Yeah. When I was a student in rabbinical school, I decided I wanted to take a class over at NYU, and this guy who interprets the book of Leviticus, Baruch Levine, taught that class, and it was truly fascinating. Um, and a big part of it was the idea of reading these Pisharim. I audited it. I didn't take it for credit, but it was so much fun. Okay. So we don't really know what's going on, and the interpretations are wild. I think we should keep going, of course. We spent half of the class on one verse. I apologize. But, that's what it's going to take sometimes. Anything else on that verse before we go on? You're like, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see for me to think about someone's face changing. I mean, it's especially like if you think of a child when you explain something and they're very quizzical and then it gets explained and their face can light up and change with the knowledge that they've just gained on whatever the subject might be.
Right.
So they're showing or they're talking about what's a wise man, one who knows the interpretation of these things or the meaning of these different adages, and once they learn that, their face can light up.
Yes, absolutely. And that's how Rashi goes for it. Look what he says about, and who knows how to interpret things, i.e., the solution. Right. So interpretation is one way. It's also pesher as in pitron, like a solution. Um, as we find regarding Daniel, because of his wisdom, for he was wise in the fear of heaven, secret solutions were revealed to him. Solutions or interpretations. It's kind of all mixed together. It's so interesting the way the Hebrew letters are not as precise as we might think. Who is like Moses, who brought about compromises between Israel and their Father in heaven? So, yes, the wisdom that comes and then it lights up faces for sure.
Um, I think it's interesting that it starts out who is like the wise man, and it's not saying in this little section that it has to be a wise man that experienced man. It's like any man. Any man can be this wise man. It's not making it a class of sages. It's who's like it.
Right. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. He seems to be sort of pontificating on human condition rather than, I think we see a lot of praise of the wise ones.
Right. And I know that the language is included in I mean it points to the adult male, but honestly what Urban's suggestion of the example with the child is very suitable because a child's face does very easily light up when they have wisdom.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting. Okay. Well, let's keep going. Ani pi melech shemor ve'al. Wow. Divrat Shvuat Elohim. I do. The mouth, the voice or the mouth of the king guard or obey. And this is a hard one to interpret. What do you guys have for translations?
I counsel you, keep the king's commandment also in regard to an oath to God.
I have obeyed the king's word, I say, and the word of your oath to God.
Mine's much like Irvin's I, and then in parentheses, counsel thee, keep the king's command, and that in regard of the oath of God. And it says, and that, and what? I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. And the command in regard to the oath of God. So basically, I think what they're saying is keep both the king's command and the command with regard to the oath of God. But yeah, so there seems to be a parallel, at least in one version, between the king and the King of Kings to follow them.
What, Rabbi, what is it in your translation that lends to don't rush in your translation?
So what they say here is it's moved down or moved up from the next verse. So in other words, Altivahel, Altibahel. It doesn't make any sense. I'll be honest.
What does all Tiva hell mean? Don't what?
Don't hurry along, maybe? I don't know. What are your thoughts, Avital? I don't know if you can hear this. Maybe not. Oh, there you are.
No, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm sorry. It's like don't be frightened or startled.
Oh, that's
Bahala
right.
is like to be startled.
Yeah, that's right. Tibahel is more of a startling.
Yeah, but I think it also can be rush. Like to go in a hurry.
Huh.
So is the king God? Is it one and the same?
I think they're making a distinction between God
And who?
and a human king.
Well, the king's commandments, it would seem like it would be talking about God's commandments,
But
but
does it say commandments?
I don't know on yours, and here it does.
It does?
In our
His
translation.
command.
Oh, and
Yeah.
yours it says king's order. Here's his king commandment.
Huh.
So
And
it
since
looks like
there's
they're
no capital,
interchanging it. It looks like they're interchanging it. I don't know. That's why I'm wondering, is it two separate entities?
I don't know.
Looks like they had a challenge with dividing up these verses, huh?
Yes, they did. As you
Mhm.
know, in our usual text study, we don't get into the weeds like this, but here we are getting into the weeds. So
Well, trying to understand what it says. So, all right. So if it's the idea of obeying the king's orders, so that's the place where you live, right? It's not the king of kings, that kind of thing. But if you take it, don't rush into uttering an oath by God. That is creating a situation for yourself where you are going to have a tough time getting out of it, unless you go through some, the getting out of an oath was a pretty big thing. So, but you can't, the king's orders you can't choose. That comes down from your outside. But these things are something that you take on for yourself, and don't rush into it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole don't rush, I guess it's T-Bah hell, but that doesn't make sense either. I don't really understand this. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I think it's great for us to try to interpret this, but but I'm not convinced that I understand this at all.
Well, maybe these are things for us to ponder, and we don't have to understand outright.
Yeah, I mean, that's
So,
sort of the way it is. It is what it is.
but Sylvia, all the work that we spend studying and uncovering the impacts of taking an oath, we don't have that in modern religious practice, but it was back in the day a pretty big thing to take an oath. So you don't want to rush into it.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. And you,
another problem I have with this is even translating it as God. The word Elohim, it does not feel like a word we've heard in the book of Ecclesiastes up to this point. I can't remember a reference to God. And Elohim can also mean judge.
Judge, right.
So I don't really and in a way that makes more sense to me because they're talking about kings and potentially judges. But you're right. It doesn't really, and also it feels like it's just dropped in here as if there's no relationship to the previous verse.
Well, I'm kind of thinking, okay, as far as oaths and stuff, how about the fellow that made the oath, I'm going to kill the first thing that walks out the door, and it's his wife or child.
Daughter.
And it's saying, don't, rush into an oath with God. Maybe having that kind of aspect, or making an oath like, whoever has your idol will die. In the case of Rachel having the father's idol under her saddle there, and saying, don't rush the counsel I give you, keep the king's commandments, or in your thing, keep the king's laws, the king's orders. You got to obey those type of things. But in uttering an oath to God, don't rush into that. Your words can come back to bite you for saying an utterance to God or oath to God, and you rush into it. In those two examples that I just gave from the Torah, where they were very devastating, what happened because of making this oath without really thinking about it, to have the wisdom to think about it and wait for your oath.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but the king's law, you can't think about it. You just have to obey it.
I mean, zooming out and not trying to get every word. Like I don't understand they're pulling from verse 3,
Well,
but
then why don't we look at verse 3 and see how it changes if those
yeah, well,
words are not
I
there.
I was just going to say that for verse 2, there is a way to interpret this as a whole verse. Like I'm looking at it from a Hebrew perspective. It's like, as for me, and I, the word of the king observed, and upon the words or the ideas of the the oath of God, judge, whatever, so too observe. In other words, if I were to rewrite this verse, I would take this word and put it at the end. I mean, I'm kind of curious what Avital thinks of this. So the mouth of the king, meaning the ideas or the words of the king, right? A p, a pay, right? The mouth of the king, and concerning the words of the promise or the oath of whatever Elohim is, both whether it's the king or it's the Elohim, whether that's a god or judge, Shemor, observe, guard.
Do you mind reading it again? Can you read the verse again in
I'll
Hebrew?
read it to you first in the way it's written, and then I'll read it to you the way I'm imagining it reorganized.
Okay.
Ani pi melech shemor va'al dibrat shavuat Elohim. Okay? That's the actual verse. But I might read it as Ani dash pi melech va'al dibrat shavuat Elohim shemor.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have to like look at it and think about it and really look at it to put it together
I mean, it's
because
a
it
crazy
doesn't
verse. So
flow.
let a
Yeah.
it was worth a shot. All right, let's go to verse 3. We've spent half hour on verse 1, 15 minutes on verse 2. Let's see if we can get it to 7.5 minutes on verse 3.
But if we didn't stop and break it up, I mean, if we were to read, any novel and just read it sentence and then discuss the sentence and then read the next sentence and then discuss, it's not, it doesn't flow. And it may be like for mine, it looks like verse 2, 3, 4 are a paragraph. So it may be, yes, definitely we should look at 3, but maybe flow into also 4.
Okay, let's do 3 and 4 then together. Okay.
Okay.
Al tibahel mipanav telech, al tamod b'davar ra, ki kol asher yachpot yaseh. Basher Dvar Melech Shilton Umi Yomar Lo Matase.
My book actually puts in number 5 as part of that same paragraph. 1 through 5 is one paragraph.
Shomer Mitzvah Lo Yeda Davara Ve'et Mishpat Yeda Lev Chacham.
All right.
Now what? Okay. Well, why
Translate
doesn't,
it, Rabbi.
pardon? What did you say?
Translate it.
Oh,
I said, please translate it for us in your Hebrew.
oh, okay. Well, I'm struggling here. Tibahel means to like flee. Isn't that right? Why am I getting?
Mhm.
Oh, shoot. Stop with the pop-ups. To disturb. Yeah. Do not be disturbed from before, before his face. You shall go. Do not stand on a bad matter, for all which he desires, he will do, or he can do anything he pleases. All that he may desire, he will do. Just as the matter of the king is a authority, and umi yomar lo matase, and who will say to him, "What are you doing?" Shomer mitzvah lo yeda davar ra, an observer of the commandments, or in this case they translate it as orders, will not know a bad thing. One who observes the commandments will not experience a bad thing, will not know a bad thing. And the time and of judgment, a a a wise heart will know. Which is interesting. Okay.
Wow. Well, Well, Rabbi, it starts out in one, it's talking about a kind of an esoteric thing that a wise man, their face lights up when they encounter wisdom. But then again, you're living in a world where the king's rule is law and you don't question it, you just do it. It's not like you're going to get to that point of your face lighting up going, oh, I know why we ought to do this. You have to do it. And in the end of 5, it says, and he who obeys the commandment without thinking about it will not know evil. So, yeah. But then there's that little caveat at the end, a wise man will know time and justice.
Is that how they translate it?
In
Time
mine,
and
in the
justice?
art scroll.
And mine is, and the wise mind discerns the time of judgment.
Interesting. When I see the word 8, which does mean time, it brings me back to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, when there's a time for this and a time for that,
Mhm.
right? To everything, turn, turn, turn. So, and I don't know how that all relates, but it does pop. It does, generate thoughts of that.
Is that an unusual word for time other than like Zman and I don't know what else?
Yeah, sometimes it means epoch, like
Oh,
like a like
an era.
an era. Yeah. At least that's how it comes across to me. I don't know if Avital has a different sense of it. We have Et Hazamir Higia. We have that in Shira Shirim, in Song of Songs. Et Hazamir, the time of singing is come.
I've always thought of it as simply being a more like poetic way to describe time.
Ah, okay. But it feels
But I
like
think
it's like a
era is a
season.
reasonable.
What's
Yeah, I
that?
think I think you're right. I think season or era is actually a good. It's also a way that it's, I think the way you just brought it up, it is a miligia, like the time of spring, of the singing of the bird that sings. So that's a season.
Right. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. I mean, we can look at that really quickly again at how it's written there. I think I can just put the URL in here and we'll be able to click right back. Maybe. There we go. For everything is a time and an 8 for every desire. Oh, Chefetz is also there under the heavens.
Oh, so there's not time is not there.
It is. Yeah, it is. Zman.
Oh, oh, okay, yeah.
A time is set for everything. And
A season.
another,
They
yeah, I would actually translate this in
they
reverse.
reversed it. Yeah.
Yeah. A time is set for everything, a season for every experience under the heaven. That's how I would translate it. And a lalette, a time for being born. In other words, an era of birthing and an era of dying, an era of planting and an era of uprooting, and that harvest, right, is a season. It's actually it's not a moment in time; it's a period of time. So I think that's what's going on in this verse as well. Back to verse chapter 8. And here's Chefetz again. There is a time for every purpose under heaven. So here it's for every desire, there is a time and justice. So this feels like it is echoing chapter 3 pretty substantially, because we have for every season here, Kol and Chefetz and 8 are all words that appear in chapter 3, verse 1 that we just looked at. For every purpose there is a time and justice.
Doom. Now, what are they using for doom? Because it says that your translation says doom and ours says judgment.
Yeah, it should be judgment.
Yeah.
But they're pointing out that ki ra'at ha'adam rabba alav. We didn't actually do this verse.
No, we
Okay,
No,
did.
so let's do it real quick. Ki l'chol chefetz yesh ed umishpat ki ra'at ha'adam rabba alav. For every desire, for every experience, if we go back to what we saw, there is a time and an, a judgment, I guess, of the experience, of that moment in time. Ki ra'at adam, because the bad or the hardship of human beings is great upon it. So that's how they're getting this to doom, because judgment, I guess, is filled with dread.
Now, my paragraph is 1 through 8. I have that as a paragraph. And I believe, like what everyone is saying, if we start taking one little sentence at a time, trying to analyze it, I think it's better if we work like on a paragraph so that the sentences go with it together and it's a thought. Here, I feel like I'm very fragmented because everyone has different ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some thematic connection between these verses.
Yeah.
And so it does make sense to look at it as a chunk, but just pragmatically speaking, doing 8 verses all in one fell swoop means, a less critical reading. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. We do
well,
need to look at each verse, but we
and,
also need to get a sense of totality. What were you going to say, Sylvia?
oh, just that for the interpreters and translators divided up differently because mine stops at 8.5 and then 8.6 goes 8.6, 8.7, 8.8, 8.9. And that's when they break. So I guess what they have on Safaria, having it sentence by sentence, they haven't made a choice to bunch them together in a certain way.
I mean, if we were looking at the Masoretic text, right, the original version of this, let me move these things. What we would do is we would eliminate everything. And now what you have is just a whole bunch of words without any breaks. They don't have the I don't know. Sorry about all my noisy computer. Yeah, I mean, there's really no way to know. Oh, I guess what I want is vowels. I don't see a break.
No.
There's no breaks at all. And that includes openings and closings of verses. They're just not here.
Yeah, but some of those is more than one sentence. Like right there, look at number whatever you like, 11, 10. There's two sentences there. Or in the case of 8.1, there's two sentences, or 1, 2, 3, actually 4 sentences for 8.1.
What do you mean by 4 sentences?
Okay, 8.1, and at least in this book, and it's written in the Hebrew that way also. It says, "Who is a wise man?" with a question mark, meaning one sentence. The next sentence is, "And who knows the interpretation of the thing?" question mark. That's the second sentence. And then it goes, "A man's wisdom lights up his face, and the harshness of his face is changed." So it's actually 3 sentences. The last two have a comma.
I see. So 4 clauses within one sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So garnering is not just one sentence per I don't know what you call these number one, two, three, and four. What do you call each one of those?
Verse.
The verse, the stanza. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and of course, in the original source, there were no uh, colons at the end of sentences. They were just run on. There's even evidence that maybe there were no spaces between words. So, it gets very, very, very challenging to interpret. But it's okay.
Hmm.
Let's go. Let's see. So, okay. Well, I'm not sure where we are right now. I think we're at verse 7.
3 to 5, I thought.
Well, we did do 5 and we read 6 also. So,
Mhm.
and we're actually now at 6 o'clock. So, um,
I keep waiting for your face to light up like you're understanding this reference.
I love it. Thank you. Not quite. Kie nenu yodea ma sheyeh ki kasher yeh mi yagid lo. Because a person does not know what will be. Because just as it will be, even when it is on the point of happening, who can tell him? Because when it will be, who will tell him? Okay. One does not know what will be because when it will be, who will tell him? Now, if that's not a riddle, I don't know what is.
Well, you're going through something, and in the moment, you can't understand what's happening to it. You're just acting to it emotionally, and you're far away from the understanding of what's happening to you. It really takes time to look back to understand it in context, as you say. So,
I think that's right.
Hindsight is 2020, they say.
yes.
What did you say? I'm
But
sorry.
hindsight is 2020.
Right.
And then, but when you're in the middle of something, there's so much to process and the emotional response and
Right.
information overwhelm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And how that relates to everything else is still a little bit unclear. Um, but the verse before it suggests that as we're experiencing life, we may not really know what's going on. And then later on, it's processed. I mean, if there's judgment later, it's not at the time of, then he seems to be saying something to that effect.
Well, it's talking about his death there. For there is a time for every experience, including the doom for a man's calamity overwhelms him, is what yours says. Their mind was, for to every matter there's time and judgment, and a man's calamity may be great upon him. I'm reading that as your death might be right upon you there, and there's, for every time.
But that's not the only calamity. There's lots in life that are calamity, and guess what? You don't get to die. You just have to live through it.
Yeah, a little unclear, but interestingly, the commentary within this communal translation says, or I guess it's not the communal, I don't know which translation this is. Still another term for death, CF, the time of calamity for the hour of death in verse 9, chapter 9, verse 12.
Hmm.
So Irvin seems to be onto something. But you're right. I mean, the word isn't calamity either.
What is it?
Ra'at ha'adam would be the bad things of a person, which is calamity,
Hmm.
Hmm.
or the bad things singular. I mean, so because it's in
Or
the
maybe
singular,
maybe
Yeah. Go ahead.
Maybe bad maybe the bad nature, like the man might be evil or bad,
The ra'at
not calamity
of
happening
a human
upon them,
being,
but
the bad side
yeah,
of a
human being
person,
is good. Yes.
like the evil of a person,
Hmm. Interesting.
And I think
is
overall,
great.
maybe
My translation says, for to every matter there is a time in judgment, for the evil of man is great upon him.
Yeah, see, that's aligned with that translation. That's great. So yeah, there's once again,
Just
I can't say that this is my favorite part of this book because we're having such a hard time interpreting it, and it's not, crystal clear. It's like reading, Beowulf. Like I'm just not going to be able to do it very well. This is not my expertise. You
I
know,
think another thing that comes is, how there is the idea that we may not, eh, the purpose of all the experiences that we go through, we may not understand them, but it's part of the big picture, um, and God knows, and maybe that is part of what they're alluding to, is that we may not understand, but the whole idea of when bad things happen to good people.
yeah,
yes, there's
that's
somewhere
Part of
along
interesting.
God's plan or something.
there's a whole thing about the righteous who die and the wicked who live. I don't remember what where that is, but it's in here. The
It's like,
Sadiq Baralo.
yeah, I think it's like chapter 2 or so. It's also the
Yeah.
sinking of the Reuben James, but that's beside the point.
Huh?
Sinking of the Reuben James, the song. Why
Huh?
the worst of men must live and the best of men should die.
Wow.
Okay.
I wonder where they got that idea, whoever wrote that song.
It's theodicy. It's more theodicy, why bad things happen to good people, but also why do good
Right.
things happen to bad people, which I think a
Yeah.
lot of us are asking these days, but that's beside the point. um,
The Rasha Barato. Barato.
um, all right, I think we're not going to get much further. It's already 6 o'clock. I think we should try to pick up from verse 8 next week, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure. Just remember, verse 8. Think in terms of Hanukkah. We're going to do chapter 8, verse 8. All right?
It's all about
Shavuot Tov.
wind. Wind.
Have a good night, everyone. Boker
Yes.
Tov.
Yeah, Shavuot.
Shatov, Shavuot.
Shavuot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.